What's up, guys? We're going to talk about the special importance of Nirvichara Samadhi in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Now, the interesting mystery here with Nirvichara Samadhi is that in addition to being an enlightened state, it's also one of the 4 types of mundane Samadhi. So that's what I'm going to decode for you guys today. To start off, we need to talk about how Nirvichara fits into these 4 mundane Samadhi. The first 2 of them are Savitarka and Savichara, meaning with deliberation and reflective, referring to concepts Satchidananda brings up earlier on in verse 117. These 2 states are distinguished by having name, form, and knowledge of them both mixed together, which is how we know they are mundane states, part of the path to enlightenment. Name and form refer to the meaning of the object and the physical object itself, whereas knowing is the cognition of them. The distinction between Savitarka and Savichara is that the meditation objects become subtle. For example, the tanmatra, which are on the plane of subtle elements. For example, concepts like the color white. The next 2 are Nirvitarka and Nirvichara, without deliberation and non-reflective. And in these states, the object of concentration shines alone, devoid of distinction between name and quality. Sutra 143. There's only knowledge, jnana, of the objects meditated upon, whereas normally there's also name and form mixed in, occurring simultaneously. Although these states sound exalted, they're still mundane states. They involve the perception of knowing. There's still a conditioned phenomena in play. There is one exception to this, and that is Nirvichara Samadhi, the most important of all 4. Though it is classified as a subtle meditation along with Savichara, as we see in Sutra 144, it can also be an experience of enlightenment. And we know this because the book says, in the purity of Nirvichara Samadhi, the Supreme Self, the Adhyatma, shines. The reason this is possible is because though it can begin with subtle objects of concentration, the pinnacle of that kind of meditation results in realization. When this experience of enlightenment occurs, you gain what's called Ratambara Pragya, the absolute true consciousness or wisdom filled with truth. And this is defined as a special truth that goes beyond any knowledge you can gain from hearing, scriptural study, or inference. In other words, this is realization of God, a knowledge or gnosis that goes beyond any knowledge you can gain from worldly experience or using intellect. The curious thing is that Nirvichara is said to have impressions remaining. All 4 of them are classified as Sabija Samadhi, with seed. And these seeds are the karmic tendencies such that when you reemerge from that state, you return to your normal worldly consciousness, which means you haven't gained self-realization per se. Satchidananda agrees. These sabija imply the goal has not been reached, and yet Nirvichara is also classified as an achievement of enlightenment, which he does not comment on. So this is a really important clue for you to keep in mind, and you'll soon see why. The next point is where the book says, the impression produced by this samadhi wipes out all other impressions, which means the experience is by definition enlightenment. It eliminates your samskaras, the impressions or tendencies within your psyche that tie you down to reincarnation. However, note that it itself is said to leave an impression, which implies there is still an identity to receive it. Something receives the idea of having been influenced by an experience. We know this because in the final verse it tells us that Nirbija, the Nirbija Samadhi, the seedless Samadhi, arises when even this impression is wiped out, showing us that Patanjali did in fact mean it in the usual sense of the word samskara. Nirbija, therefore, is the ultimate level of enlightenment. It is beyond all attachments and identities. There is only unity or kaivalya, absoluteness. What all of this shows us is that enlightenment isn't a final experience all of the time. It can actually occur in different degrees of intensity. Some more supporting evidence for this is where Satchidananda says, even with the Ratambara Pragya, the subtle mind is there. There's still a division between the wisdom and the owner of the wisdom. In other words, you still have the idea that I have realized God, rather than just being it truly and completely. This conclusion is important because in Buddhism, we are specifically taught that there are indeed 4 possible levels of enlightenment: Sotapatti, Sakadagami, Anagami, and arahant. Stream entry, once returner, non-returner, and worthy one, or complete nirvana. And we see that the same teaching is here in the sutras as well. It just hasn't been codified or stated explicitly. Now, as a final point to unravel the mystery of why Nirvichara is an experience of moksha, but simultaneously sabija, leaving behind impressions, the kind of impressions that remain after these experiences aren't the same as mundane karma. They're very subtle karmic chains called the 10 sangyojana, which constitute what a being fundamentally is. And these are comparable to what are called the sevenfold wisdom, the saptata bhumi, in verse 227. The most important of these that you need to know gets eliminated upon the first level of awakening, stream entry. And this is something called Sakaya Ditti, self-identity view, the idea that you are a limited concept called a person or a doer. And this corresponds to the fourth of the Saptata Bhumi. There are a few more compelling bits of evidence that the Yoga Sutras advocate degrees of enlightenment. But I'm going to leave it at that for now and put that in a separate video under a different topic, Kaivalya. So, I hope you enjoyed this exposition on Nirvichara Samadhi and the mysteries it contains. Hit like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more spiritual content. Check out my t-shirt store below, and I'll see you later. Peace out.